really excited to be talking about databases. I feel like a lot of people talk about app development without talking about databases. So really excited to be digging here a little bit more into the actual data that powers the software that we use. So I'm gonna go and share my screen. And you can let me know if you see it. My name is Brian, and we're going to be talking about databases. So this is to demystify databases and also explain many of their use cases. I think a lot of people just think that there's one type of database. If you're an app developer, software engineer, I'm sure you know that there's several, but there's even way more than I think most people realize. So hopefully by the end of this, you'll be fluent or at least generally knowledgeable about 9 different serverless types of databases in AWS, and hopefully inspire you to start building some technology. So my name is Brian. As Sneha said, I'm CTO and one of the co-founders of Airblock Technologies. We digitize paper and supply chain for aviation and aerospace. I'm also an AWS community builder, and I've been going to a number of different hackathons over the past couple of years, and that's actually how I got into tech, and they've made it really accessible. So I really appreciate Whizlabs for making technology accessible, because I know it helps developers, especially when they're starting out, like me, going back a couple of years. So I'm really excited to be sharing all of this with you. So when we think about databases, I want to sort of give an overview at a high level of what databases are, give a brief history into serverless, and then walk through 9 different database types, and also help you get started with your own app. So we'll be going through a couple Whizlabs labs at the end of this. So this will sort of give you an overview into how to start. So I'm really passionate about data. And I'm really passionate about databases. I see data as the energy flowing through a home, and databases are the electrical grid system. So specifically, data can be your user's information. That could be a username, a password, a song title, an author. You can create role-based permissions, so you can share certain types of data with certain types of folks. And there's a lot of different use cases related to that. Also, data specifically is the mechanism powering user interactions. We'll be talking later about a service called Neptune, and you can create graph databases through some different technologies. And then that can help map relations between users. Think like with Twitter, maybe you are following a number of tech channels. So then you'll want to get more, people that are in tech to follow you. So what are the relationships that are mapping data amongst users? And then also data can be the rules supporting your software system. And this can be backend logic. This can be explaining how the system shares data with users, how they get recommendations. Think like Netflix. How do you get recommendations for the movies you watch? So when we think about front end and back end, data is now becoming one of those things of, is there really a differentiation between front end or back end? I think everything's moving towards full stack. And you really see this over the history of databases, even going way back to the Abacus, right? That's a very physical database. And really where the limitations around that was you're limited to the data that the system itself can process. Now, when we think about serverless databases, right, or server databases, really in the next step, you're limited to specific devices that you have to manage, you have to maintain, you have to patch, you have to provide updates. And there's a lot of effort that has to be put towards doing that. It can be very cost intensive. You need someone that's really skilled, highly skilled at hardware as well as software. And where I see us moving towards is now sort of in this 3-dimensional space of serverless databases. So this is what AWS has created, for example, a whole ecosystem behind serverless technologies. So virtual private cloud, VPC, Elastic Cloud Compute, EC2, really being able to now run compute network servers, but you don't have to manage them because they're managed by other data warehouses or other places, other facilities. And these facilities are quite large, but they're managing a ton of different technologies and servers that you're using every day. So that's where serverless plays a huge role. And now you don't have to be limited by you having to manage and permission your own servers. You can now borrow compute from someone else. And then in 4D, I see this as the future where now it's going to be data-driven development. It's not just enough to make an app or an MVP. You also have to create a data model. You also have to be managing the data amongst your users. You need to be able to provide recommendations. That involves AI, machine learning. AWS has a series of tools around a service called SageMaker, and then that actually can power AI recommendations. So really, I see data only becoming more and more important as development increases and more people get involved. So just to kick this off, I want to start talking about one of the first databases, Relational Database Service, so RDS. So relational database, they're just easy to build. They're very quick to create, and it's really a framework for a relational database. They can use a number of different engines. We're talking Aurora from Amazon, Postgres, MySQL, MariaDB, Oracle, and SQL Server. And they're very cost efficient and highly scalable. So they allow you to offload read traffic. You can create and basically connect to the database really in seconds. And we'll actually be going through a lab at the end of this where we'll go through and see exactly how quick this can really happen. And really you can run this with a VPC. You can really just be running this all serverlessly, which is quite amazing to be able to just do this right from your computer. So it's very easy to do this. You would just go, and we'll do this later, but you create a database. We'll be choosing the free tier so that we don't have to worry about any charges. And we'll put in a name, we'll put in a username, we'll get a password. And then you can enable a number of different settings for this. So you can have different types of encryption. You can have different types of, you can create, like, let's say that you're running different VPCs. You could choose different ones for different workloads. You could have automatic backups, security groups, which are super important. You can make it publicly accessible or not. And then really in around 5-ish minutes or so, you'll get a database that you can now run. And we'll be using something called MySQL Workbench. And then we'll be able to actually go into that and run queries and actually update some data. And then you'll see that it's running and it's all right within AWS. So what could this actually look like? So the user could read and write to main database. You could also set up read replicas so that you could be basically backing up your data. And this could all be running within a security group in the cloud, running under a VPC, and then under an AWS region. And basically why this is very cool is that you could create certain permissions for certain types of RDS. So you could read and write to this one, but let's just say that you want to be able to only have read-only access to the backup, right? You don't want to be editing the backup. This is just replicating something. So you'd be able to have different permissions for different types of databases and have them all connect, which is pretty cool. So DynamoDB, this is probably one of the most popular databases in AWS. It's really fast, it's very flexible, it's a NoSQL database, and you can use a primary key to index items. So you could have unique identifiers for all of the elements in database. We'll actually be doing a lab on this as well at the end of this. And it's highly performant, it's highly available, single-digit latency. They have all of these like 99.999% availability. They have all of these different statistics, but it's very fast, it's very available, and top companies are using this. I'm talking Lyft, Airbnb, Capital One, Toyota. There's a lot of companies that are using DynamoDB in production, which is quite exciting. And you can literally get started with this in seconds. And then you're now, a top tier tech company. You're using technology that other developers at the technologies or the software or the hardware that we use today, they're using this. And you can use DynamoDB to build basically the back-end data structures for progressive web applications, for software, for microservices. It's very, very easy to scale up and down as well, which is very important as the need increases between what your users need and what you have available. Let's say that you need to be creating, more databases, or you need to be tracking more data. You'd be able to then create more columns in DynamoDB and be able to build a bigger database. So there's a lot of different use cases like IoT, ad tech, gaming, mobile, apps like iOS or Android, even desktop applications. So there's a lot of really great use cases, and you'd be setting this up super easily. We're just going to create, like, literally right here. We create a DynamoDB table. We can add a sort key, which is helpful for querying. Then when we create the table, super easy to add items, for example, maybe like an artist or a song title. And then you could start creating your own database. And now think like, does this maybe look a little bit like SoundCloud or Spotify? We could create our own database tracking all of this information. So it's super easy to query. And again, what would this kind of look like? So the user would probably be connecting, and this is not like everyone has to do this. This is just an example, but a user could use Cognito. Cognito is a service by AWS. It helps create user pools and user groups to authenticate and permission and authorize access. You'd be able to then log in. It knows that you're logged in as a user. Let's say that there's some sort of API that we need to call for logged in users. Now we're going to run a Lambda function. They're just serverless functions running in the cloud. We're going to connect to DynamoDB. And let's say that we want to add a song title, right? We want to upload some data. We'll use, post, and then that'll create data in DynamoDB. Then it'll say, okay, update it to DynamoDB. And then it'll go back to the Lambda function, go back to the API gateway, and then show the user, hey, your data's here. So this all happens super fast and very quickly. So that's a little bit of 3 services, and we'll take a little bit of a break. And I'm just going to check the chat as well for questions.
Yeah, Brian, we have one question from Mike. Can you check the Q&A section?
Yes, let me get that. Hey, Mike, thanks for the question. I'm just reading this now.
Sure.
Question related to taking example, I store transaction data, online store, credit card, take into consideration. Yes, so that's a great question. When you're talking about secret managers, KMS, let's say that you're storing credit card numbers. There's a number of different services that actually can do that for you, and then they plug into AWS really easily. So something that specifically comes to mind, because you mentioned credit cards, using Stripe. Stripe actually has quite a number of great integrations, and they have an API that's very compliant and very easy to integrate into AWS. That is just one example. I'm pretty sure there's like other ones that are for more specific use cases, like maybe PayPal, maybe a bank might have some sort of API to connect to the system. But if you want to get started with doing credit card transactions or managing e-commerce, Stripe is a really great option for that. And then that specifically, like if you think about financial data, that might be hosted within Stripe. And I sort of say like, let the experts handle the expert data. So they have a number of different tools, and they have a whole legal teams and everything to actually be managing financially the compliance that you would need. So you'd probably want to use a system like that that's already in place, kind of as like a sandbox. And then you'd be using your app to connect to that type of system so that your AWS environment would be leveraging the Stripe system. And then Stripe would be helping you deliver what you need for your users. So that's at least what I would probably recommend from like a credit card or financial transaction perspective. There are ways to sort of build your own transactions, but definitely would recommend using something that's already been built out. It's so much easier to just use what someone else has done rather than trying to like create your own systems. Like if it's already built, or like if the shoe fits, wear it. I don't know if you know that phrase, but that's sort of something that I would recommend for sure. But thanks for the question, Mike. That's great.
Yeah, hello. Just let me share my screen. Yeah, can you guys see my screen?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
we can.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Just wanted to, from Whizlabs team, I just wanted to give an introduction to our platform which we have. So as you know, many of you might be learning cloud and you might be into the intermediate stage or advanced stage. The only thing that comes to your mind is, how do I get some hands-on experience on these services? So that is the most important question everybody asks themselves. How do I get the experience? Where do I start? What should I learn? And what should I focus on? So these are the things, even when you know the theory part, it becomes a little bit difficult to answer. So there are many ways by which you can get the experience. One is to create your own AWS account and try all the steps, whatever is given in the AWS doc, so that you can see, okay, whether am able to successfully do the steps which they have given. But there is also a problem that how do I validate myself, whether the steps which are given by AWS in their docs, whether I have completed them properly or not. So it becomes a little bit difficult to manage these things. So in Whizlabs, we have a platform where we are covering all these things. And the one more advantage for this is that we are not charging anything for this. So whenever you create your own AWS accounts, usually you do have to provide your credit card, and there is a possibility that you might forget to delete the resources which you have created, and you might get a large credit card bill. So you will be thinking, how do I peacefully learn this AWS cloud without getting into any trouble with my credit card charges? So this is where Whizlabs will come into picture. So we have a platform where we are providing a variety of labs depending on the learning paths of individual role. So let me just give an example of labs which we have so that you will get a better understanding. So let me just open. Okay. So we are just logging into whizlabs.com. I think it is taking some time. Okay, so now let me go to my course. Let's say my course is AWS Solutions Architect. So I'll just search for this. 1 minute. Okay, AWS Solutions Architect. Right. Okay, so AWS Certified Solutions Architect. AWS. Okay. So as you can see, we have practice test online courses. So along with this practice test and online courses, we are providing the hands-on labs as well. So I'll just go through one of the labs to make you understand how our platform works. Okay, so as you can see, our platform is designed in such a way that it would be very easy for students to learn. We have practice tests, we have online courses, and then we have labs. Everything at one place. You can do the practice test, you can go through the online course and get the theory part understanding. Then you can test yourself with respect to practice test, and also we have the labs here. So in the labs, we have designed these labs based on the syllabus provided by AWS and also much more. So we are following the syllabus for this particular certification, and also we are including more labs which will give you in-depth understanding of particular resources. So right now, since we are having a webinar of database, let's see one of the labs which we have in the database. Okay. So, just give it a minute. Okay. So I'm just going to open our database. So there is a lab called Introduction to Relational Database Service. So let me just start it. So here in our platform, you can see we have different sections. When it comes to lab, there is a start button which will create the AWS environment for you where you will be able to perform the lab. So this lab is particularly about creating a RDS database, and we are going to test the connection with the MySQL workbench. So here you can see we have provided the comprehensive set of steps where you will be able to see each and everything which is needed to complete this lab. So we also have an architecture diagram which explains diagrammatically what exactly we are doing. And then we have prerequisites. So here you will be able to understand what other software, what third-party softwares do you need to perform this lab. So those things you can download separately and keep it ready. So once you have all those things, you can just see the steps. How do I start this lab? So here we are just saying that start the lab. So you just have to click on start the lab. So right now what it is doing is it is allocating you one of the AWS accounts with IAM user, password, and everything. So here you can see we have provided you with the Iam user, password, access key, and secret access key. So the advantage is that you can access the AWS account either through a management console or programmatically from your terminal. So both access are provided here. So let me just open a console. So when I click on open console, it is just opening the AWS account which we are providing you, and you just have to enter Iam user and password. Okay, so once you provide this, so as you can see, I am right away I have entered into the AWS account. You have not provided any credit card, you have not provided any other your personal details to AWS, nothing like that. You don't have to worry about anything. So right away you have the access to everything here. So I'm just going to type RDS here, and I'm going to RDS screen. Okay, so now once we are into RDS screen, so you can see that we have given a detailed step with screenshots, which will help you understand what exactly is needed. So here we are saying first create a security group. So you have to go into the EC2 page, and then there you have to create the e-service, the security group, and then the next step would be to create the RDS from this RDS page. So each and every step is provided in detail with screenshots, so that users will know where exactly they are, and where if they are not able to understand certain things, they can always come back to these steps and see, okay, so this is where I was, so this is the one of the steps which I missed. So they will understand all these things. You can go and follow all these steps properly and complete the lab. So once the lab is completed, you will have an option here. So once the lab is completed, you will have an option here to validate the lab. So this is most important part, where you will be able to validate yourself that yes, I have done this practically and I know what it is. So right now, let me just click on this validate button. So here you will be able to see the message failed, right? The status of the validation status says failed, because I have not done anything inside the lab, inside the AWS account. So once let's say I am going to once I create the DB instance, once I select this MySQL engine and perform all the steps, the status is going to give you a success. So here is an example of how it is going to look when you complete the lab. So this way, in this way, you will be able to clearly understand the practical aspects and confident about completing certain concepts clearly. So this is very helpful in learning and getting the practical experience. So here you can see at the end, I'm saying you have successfully created the MySQL database instance inside the AWS account, and you have configured all the details properly. So you know that this is what I have learned, and I am confident to do this practically in my workplace. So, and one more advantage, as I said in the beginning, right now, let's say I have created all these things and I'm going to just close this tab. You don't have to worry about what happened to that RDS instance. You don't have to worry whether that got deleted, what is the cost of it, what will happen to the RDS created. Because what we are doing is, internally we have written a lot of scripts and we have done a lot of automation where it will take care of all these things, and it will automatically delete the resources which you have created at the end. So this gives a less problem for the users who are worried about the cost and everything. So because we are giving everything for free. So yeah, so this is our platform. We have large number of labs. You guys can just go through our labs and see what kind of labs we have. So we have covered almost all the services which are there in the AWS, and we keep on adding a lot of new labs. And you guys can suggest us. Okay, let's say you want certain concept you want to learn, so you guys can suggest us, and we can create those labs also. So as you can see here, once you completed any lab, you can see how many attempts you have done, and once you do the validation, it is going to show, okay, this is the lab I have done, and this is the validation. So you will be able to download the reports of what you have completed. See here, you can see today I have done this and there is a success. So you can just download this report and you can use it for your, let's say in your office, you want to give it as a proof that you have completed these kind of courses. So this report will give you complete details on what all things you have learned, and it is a proof that you have learned it properly. So yeah, so Brian is going to take a complete lab at the end of the session. So he's going to take one of the labs, and he's going to show, he's going to take an example of RDS and Lambda, and he's going to show how it is done. So yeah, so this is our platform. Since it is free, make use of it, and it will help you guys a lot. Yeah, thank you, and back to you, Brian.
Awesome. Thanks, Pavan. Yeah, I'm huge fans of Whizlabs and the platform. I think you guys walk through all of the steps super easily. I think it's so intimidating to get started with a lot of this stuff. So I like how you really break down the topics and make it very accessible for people, because I've benefited from a lot of making tech accessible exactly like that. All right, so I'm just going to pull back the slides. Cool. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, perfect. So so sort of just continuing with this, right? So we just left off with DynamoDB. Now for Elasticache, this is used for deploying and scaling in-memory data stores. This all can happen serverlessly, and we're going to be using caching rather than just normal non-performant loading. Caching is really, really, really helpful for improving performance and just response time. This is all happening at like the sub-millisecond level, so it's very, very fast. But when we think about in-memory data stores and caching in general, this is how Airbnb or Peloton or Tinder or even the Pokemon company, right? This is how they provide high elasticity and low latency for users globally. And when we start thinking about maybe users in a specific state or maybe just one country, of course, it's more easy to scale because those are users that are close together. But what if you have users that are all across the world? Now you start having to think about caching and really thinking about, prioritizing performance so that memory can be cached and you don't have to worry about, certain data being stored in certain places and not others. So it just helps to create a more performant system for end users. So when we think about Elasticache, this is an example of what an architecture could look like. So of course we have our user logging into the system. We might have something like an Elastic Load Balancer or an ELB. That's going to be connecting to maybe an EC2 or some sort of web server. And then you're going to be able to do different things with the DB cache. So maybe reading, maybe filling with read results. And then we could save modifications to a database. So, maybe you might have seen that icon previously in this webinar. These databases can communicate with each other and share information and be very performant together. And then this is all going to be happening within a VPC and then all happening within the AWS cloud. So just to kind of give you an example of how Elasticache could, for example, reduce latency on the network side and also offload database, just pressures in general. So it just makes it more easy for the users to actually get access to the data. So when we're moving on, Neptune is really, really, really interesting because this is a fully managed service for graph databases. And graph databases are very interesting because the interrelations between users and the data that users generate for a system, this is very hot right now. Specifically being able to map how users talk to each other, how they work together, how they maybe share information amongst each other. This is going to be really important. Like even just going back to the whole Twitter example, right? Let's say that you follow a bunch of Twitter channels. Let's say that, you probably are into tech. It's probably going to guess that. If, you probably want to be recommended more tech channels. Like let's say you follow Whizlabs. Whizlabs is doing a bunch of content on cloud development. You start tweeting about that. Now, Twitter's just going to start getting a profile of, okay, well, this person really likes cloud. They like Whizlabs, so they like education and teaching. So now maybe recommend some personalization and recommendations that help create a more tech cloud focused feed. And that's what like Instagram or Facebook or even Netflix, let's say that you're watching a lot of documentaries, maybe about history. You're going to now be recommended more documentaries about history because other people that were in your shoes who also watch documentary history, they might like this specific segment. Maybe they like, maybe if you like art documentaries or maybe art history, now let's recommend you other art history documentaries or maybe TV shows that other people who like those things also like. So this is where you can create something like identity graphs, and then you can start doing pattern detection. And this is actually pretty cool and very hot right now in development. So for example, let's say that we have a number of key users, and of course they're logging into the system and they rely on our software, for example. So we're going to be modeling the relationship between people, places, and things. So graph databases are amazing because you can track the items in between users. And also, for example, I mean, let's use this as a bank example because Mike had a question about, financial transactions. So let's say that we wanted to, mitigate, fraud or detect potential fraud in a system. Let's say that everyone needs to have, social security number. Maybe they need to have a bank number. Maybe they need to have a certain password. And maybe there's a certain loan. If certain information for a certain user was shared amongst different users, let's say that the same or two people got access to the same loan, that would be hugely problematic, right? One person is supposed to get that loan, not two, not three. So you'd be able to use a graph database system like Neptune to be able to see really where problems could be arising. Or, in reverse, on a more positive note, be able to see, okay, this person follows this person. They like tech communities. Let's show them more tech recommendations. So Apache Tinkerpop and Gremlin, these are two services that can work with Neptune and then help you build out this graph database architecture. So then with Redshift, because we're just building through all these databases, this is lightning fast and it's for data warehouse. This is really important right now because if you want to sort of implement some higher level data, analysis, this is where you'd be using a system like Redshift to really optimize data analysis at scale. And it uses SQL, which is very widely used and available. So we'd be able to provide things like encryption, compression. It just has better price performance related to what else is out there. And then you really would be able to have smart data for querying purposes. So when we think about Redshift, this is an example of an architecture diagram. So the user might be leveraging something like Redshift Spectrum. And let's say that we want to, upload data from Redshift to a data lake. This data lake might be hosted in S3, which you'll see right here. It's just object-oriented storage. And let's say we want to do it in a columnar file format. And we want to also run analytics and queries on this data. We want to get a smart engine going. We might be using something like Athena in AWS for analysis, SageMaker, which I had mentioned before for AI machine learning, and then also AWS Glue and EMR for ETL. So this is where you'd be able to provide a number of different services, kind of ad hoc or a la carte, in addition to your data lake. And that's where this will be very helpful as a data analyst or analyzer, because now you'll be able to be taking all of this data, running it in real time, and then be able to get all that going. So QLDB, Quantum Ledger Database, very new service. This is using Quantum Ledger, Quantum Network. It's very, very fast, just for quantum ledgers that are out there right now. It's easy to use and develop with. It uses PartiQL and SQL compatible query language. And it's kind of cool because now you'd be able to create immutable records. And let's say that you have a journal, you want to sort of have a current state. And let's say that we have like the tech stack playbook and we have like an office key. Let's say that I wanted to like give this key to Whizlabs. I could update this. And let's say that like I wanted to give it, today because they're coming into the virtual office, right? I'm going to give them the key and then they're going to sort of have an updated ledger where this is true. But let's say tomorrow, I don't need them to have access to the virtual office key, so I could delete that record. So you'd be able to create this immutable record that can't be changed and can't be modified. Also with managed blockchain, This is now using, if you're into like, cryptography gets a lot of hype with blockchain technology, but I think also people forget that it is a database at the end of the day, and it is a ledger database where it's no longer centralized, but it's distributed amongst a series of nodes. Ethereum and Hyperledger Fabric are two examples of this. They're publicly accessible blockchain networks. They decentralize data, so you don't have to have all of your data in one specific server. It spreads it out amongst a number of supercomputers or nodes. And with managed blockchain and AWS, you can create new nodes and members easily just through the managed blockchain API. And it's fully immutable, so you can provide traceability of transactions, of data, change logs of events and information, really being able to have all of that accessible right from the cloud, right from your computer. And there was a question in the Q&A about MongoDB. So if you're interested in any sort of services leveraging MongoDB, DocumentDB is a great use case for that. Leverage VPC and MongoDB, and it's very fast, very available. And it uses JSON-like data to process millions of requests per second. 15 low latency read replicas over 3 availability zones, all happening in mere seconds or mere minutes. And you can scale up very quickly and also have very high availability. So what would this kind of look like? So for DocumentDB, user would be connecting to, getting information sent to an EC2 instance. You'll have a MongoDB shell set up and it connects the DocumentDB cluster with the EC2 instance. That's all happening within a virtual private cloud and then all happening within an AWS region. So again, this is pretty high level, but this is sort of how you'd be able to leverage MongoDB and MongoDB services right within AWS. And then key spaces. This is one of our last databases that we're going to be going through. So it's a serverless database with Apache Cassandra, which is a distributed wide column restore, NoSQL database management system. And it's for huge amounts of data with no single point of failure. So you never have to worry about servers anymore, or provisioning or patching, a lot of the stuff that I had told you before that you have to worry with if you're managing servers in-house. But thanks to serverless, you don't have to worry about that. And you can build apps with low latency. The data can be processed incredibly fast, and you can run Cassandra workloads right from AWS, which is a very top tier tech type skill to have. So definitely would recommend checking out Cassandra if you're interested in that type of data and data management. So we're going to be going through some labs on Whizlabs. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to get this set up. And I'm also just going to check the Q&A just to see if there's anything in the meantime. I see a question from Rowan. Are AWS databases going to take away the jobs of regular database administrators? Looks like they're more focused on developers. Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like a lot of these, when people say is AI going to take my job? I don't know if you know about GTP3, but I think it's OpenAI. I forget the group that's behind it. Just the name right now, but they created this prototype of this technology that sort of create a button that can log into Facebook and helps me, open up Messenger. And then you type that and then it'll code that out. And I still feel like even with AI, people get scared of is AI going to get rid of jobs? I feel like it's going to redistribute things. So when we think about, really how technology has evolved really over such a really short period of time, we continue to evolve. We continue to find need for data. Example, going back to the Abacus example, now to databases in the cloud, the need and use of data has not changed. It has stayed the same. It's just the devices in which we use data or leverage data has changed. So I don't think that AWS databases is going to take away any jobs. I think if anything, it's going to continue to enable jobs, people that need to know how to administer certain types of databases. And especially from this, we just blasted through 9 different databases. There's people that just focus on one specific database, and that's all that they do because they're experts on that. We sort of think about that, there will always be use cases for data. I think the roles might change, but the need for databases and database administrators will always continue to be important. I think maybe if anything, DBAs will become more like software engineer app development. So it won't just be enough to be permissioning the database, but you also might need to be optimizing workloads. SREs, site reliability engineers, those are really valuable for leveraging and optimizing cloud. So again, great question, Rowan. I just see the value of it only continuing to enhance. But no need to worry if you're a DBA or DBAs. I think that those skills are so important for the ecosystem and for tech in general. All right, so I am going to share my screen. All right, can you see my screen? I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, Brian, we can.
Okay, perfect. So I kind of just sped up a little bit here. Prabhat, you had walked through a lot of this stuff. So we are in the Solutions Architect Associate, and we're going to be going through a couple of different labs in here. One is Introduction to Aws Dynamodb. This is a database that we had just walked through together. And this is going to actually show us how to query maybe that information, upload data, and really create a table very quickly. So thanks to Whizlabs, we're going to be able to get our own account, and it just takes a second for it to load. All right, so the lab just started, and we're going to open up the AWS console. This is going to be your best friend if you're a cloud developer. I'm sure you've seen the screen quite a number of times. So we're going to put in our auto-generated username and password. We're going to sign in, and boom, now we have a fully administered, account that's logged through IAM. And we're going to be doing a number of different things. We're going to log into the console, which we just did, create a DynamoDB table and insert data into that table, and then search for an item. So a lot of this stuff we just did, and we're going to create a table. So when you're in the AWS Management Console, this is sort of your home base, your command center. We're going to go to DynamoDB at the top. Super easy to search for these things. So there's a ton of services to search through. So we're in DynamoDB. We're going to create a table. And we're going to put in some information. So I see we're going to put in this as the table name. We're going to add a partition key as a primary key. And we're going to make it a number, not a string. And then we're going to add a sort key. And for the sort key, we're going to do name. So the name is going to allow us to search through this database that we're going to create using this permission key. Now we're going to make sure that that's a string, which it is. And I see all of these things, and we're going to keep the defaults the same. And we're going to do create. And table is created. So now I see the spinning wheel. AWS is going to be creating this database for us, and should happen pretty quickly. This is just going to come up because we don't have authorization to access certain stream names, but in here, boom. And you can also check under tables, and you'll see that it's active. So when it's active, this means that this database can receive and send out data, which is great. So we're going to go to items, and we're going to go to create item. Now I see we're going to put in 1, and we're going to put in John. So I see the company ID, there's going to be one company, and the name is John. So we're going to quickly save that. Boom. Now I see that this data is now saved in this. Now, and this is all like fully saved. Just make sure you press save, otherwise it won't load. So now we're going to put in a couple more items here. So I see 2 and Kyle, save. We're going to do 3 and Will. And then you'll sort of start to see that this is now creating, something that maybe looks a little bit like Excel. So that's the value of DynamoDB, is that it's going to have these key value pairs. And you see, I just tried to type in, a name, and it's going, nope, you need to put in a number. So it's already telling us. And this is also like the value of DynamoDB. It helps us write really smart databases so we don't make those types of mistakes. And then 5, Kane, boom. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, John, Kyle, Will, Sarah, Kane. That's all in our database. And now this is all saved. Now I see Whizlabs is going to have us search for an item in the table. So we're going to click on where it says scan, and we're going to switch this to query. Query is going to allow us to now search through this database. So I see it's going through my table, company ID, and then name. So it's going to be going through all of this stuff. So when I see we're going to search for 4, that's the number. So it's going to try to pull this, and we're going to be trying to search for Sarah. So when we do start search, let's see if it finds it. It found it. So this is great. So this is happening in sub-millisecond level. And now we're able to see the results for our table. So super fast, super easy. And you can also search, through different permission keys. You could sort of do like ascending, descending. There's different types of query parameters that you can add to your searches. Boom. So we just did that in only a few seconds, and we'll validate it. Hopefully Whizlabs says success. All right, I see we got success. So super easy to ensure that you've gone through all of the steps. And we've already done all of this stuff, but it is able to tell you that it's active. So it's being able to track and see, basically all of what we just did and validate that what we did worked. All right, so congrats everyone. We just created a DynamoDB table, we added data to it, and we also just queried it. So I'm gonna end this lab and I'm gonna log out of my account. All right, so now we're gonna do round 2 with something that's a little bit more intensive here. So in terms of querying into RDS using MySQL with AWS Lambda, well, this is a lot of different technologies that we're working with, right? So we're gonna be using something called MySQL Workbench. I already have it uploaded on my computer. This is something that you can download. Whizlabs already includes a link to that right here. This is really great for just graphical user interface to be able to access, MySQL data, works with AWS very easily. So we're gonna be doing a number of different things, but basically we're gonna be connecting or creating an Iam Role security group. We're gonna be creating RDS instance. We're gonna be using MySQL Workbench, create a Lambda function, and then we're gonna be updating and writing some data to that. So we'll walk through all of this. We're gonna start the lab. All right, lab was started successfully. And I'm actually just gonna break to just check Q&A really quick. Okay, Shauna, thanks for the question. Can Terraform be used to deploy DynamoDB databases? I would definitely recommend going through Terraform documentation or the docs. They have a lot of really great information about leveraging, just different databases, different CI/CD pipelines. So definitely would recommend checking out that there. You might be needing to use a different, or you might need to writing maybe like a graphical API, or maybe use API gateway to be helping communicate data between DynamoDB and then maybe the user, if you have an app that's rendered locally, you might need to work on some APIs or, create some serverless functions that can help connect the app or the data input to DynamoDB. But Terraform is a great use case for managing a lot of those processes. All right, and I'm just gonna also check the chat just to make sure that I'm not missing anything. No, all right, I think we are good. All right, so now for the lab.
Hi,
so we're gonna open.
Sorry,
oh, yeah.
So we have one question in the chat box, which is from Kunal. He's asking, how can we set up or enable CDC from RDS MySQL to KDS SQLs? CDC change data capture.
Oh, yes.
In the Q&A section for you to read it easily.
Yes. I think I added. Oh yeah. Change data capture. Yeah, Kunal, I added some documentation. I added a link from the RDS user guide. I definitely would recommend checking that out. I'll actually post that in the chat as well, just so that you can see it there. Basically, yeah, I'll put that there. Hard to talk and type at the same time. So I was just reading about it while you're asking the question. So at least from AWS's perspective, it recommends that before you use CDC with your RDS instance, you want to enable it basically as a database by running its msdb. There's this whole sequence of characters, but basically you want to do that. And then specifically with SQS, there's a lot of great documentation around that as a service, just with query, the queue service, and then also with SNS, if you do notifications, SNS and SQS, they work well together. So definitely would recommend checking that out. But it seems like the documentation would be like the best step there. But oh, thank you very much. Okay, great, Kunal. Yeah, great question there. And let me know also, like, as you dive into this, if you have any follow-up questions, happy to try to help you there. All right. Sneha, is there anything else that I should answer?
No, we can proceed. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I see with AWS, we are here. So we're going to add in our username. Again, this is going to be a different login. We're going to sign in. Boom. We are in. We're not going to save this. All right. So we're all logged in. Step 1 done. Now we're going to create or I just want to make sure that so we're all good there. Okay. So create a security group for our RDS instance. So we're just going to make sure we're in the same region. Cannot stress this enough. When you permission workloads or anything, make sure you are in the right region. I can't tell you how many times when I was starting out, I would like provision something in a different region, like Ohio, because sometimes it would like come up as like Ohio East 2, and then I'd be in like North Virginia East 1, and then I'd be like, why can't I find what I need to find? So cannot stress this enough. Always make sure that you're in the right region. It's like the easiest way to like make a mistake. So make sure to check that out. So we're going to go to EC2. EC2 is our virtual private server in the cloud. And you had probably seen that in some of the architecture diagrams earlier. So when we are in this, we're going to go to network and security. Oh, I keep refreshing it. Whoops. Network and security. And we're going to go down here to security groups. And I see that we already have an EC2 that's right here. And we're going to create a security group with 336. So we're going to create a security group here. We're going to enter in this information that I see here. And for description, security group for RDS instance. Descriptions are really helpful when you start provisioning a lot of different user groups or servers or what have you. We want to be able to make sure that we know exactly what this is for. Thanks to Whizlabs, we already have a VPC running, which is great. And we don't have to worry about that. We do want to add a rule though. So under an inbound rule, so data going into the database. So we're going to switch this up. We're going to go MySQL, Aurora. We're going to make sure that this is custom. And then we're going to do 00. So this just make sure that anyone can access this database. Like there's no restrictions there. Leave everything else to default. Okay, thanks Whizlabs. We are now going to create a security group. Boom, security group created in like half of a second, maybe less. So now we're going to see this here. This is our security group related to our EC2. Now we're going to create an Iam role. So identity and access management is a very important service in AWS. Helps us manage roles, permissions, authorization, a whole bunch of different services. So we're here. We're going to click on roles right here. And we're going to click on create a role. So there's a number of different auto-generated ones that AWS creates, but we want to create a new one. So I see we're going to do AWS service. We're going to use a Lambda, make sure that it's serverless. Next is permissions. I'm actually just going to like bring this down a little bit just so I can see the bottom. All right. Now we want to attach some permissions. So we're going to add AWS Lambda VPC. So this is an auto-generated one, and AWS Lambda basic execution. Okay. So those are the ones that we're going to add. So just access to VPC and then basic execution. So then we're going to go to tags and we're going to add a key. So we're going to do name and then Lambda RDS there and review. And then we are going to create a role page. So we're going to make sure that we name this. Really important when we start searching through this, make sure that you like name roles, things that you'll actually remember, or maybe write it down in a Google Doc or maybe some sort of like Trello or Asana, just so that you can make sure that you remember exactly what you permission. Sometimes it's easy to forget certain things. In terms of the description, this is going to help us with our Iam role to access RDS. So that's why this is super important to describe this properly. We see there are the two policies that we attached in the previous one, and now we're going to create the role. All right, so now it's already there. And now we're gonna go to And we can actually search for this. Like, let's search for this just to find it. Boom. So it's already in our roles already. Super fast. So now we're going to go to RDS. And if you remember from presentation, this is our relational database service for managing a relational database. So this is actually what it's going to look like. And all right, so I see Whizlabs is going to have us create a database. So we're going to create a database right here. And we're going to switch to our original interface just so that it's compatible with the documentation that we have. All right. But definitely, if you're interested in the new database creation flow, definitely check that out. They change these quite frequently. So sometimes it's hard to keep up with all of these different changes every day. All right, so we're going to be selecting our engine. Remember, RDS has a number of these different ones, but we are going to be choosing MySQL, which is this one. And we're going to click next. And we're going to do the free usage tier, just so that we don't want to get billed for anything that we don't want to get billed for. So this is going to leverage the free usage tier, which is very generous, and it's going to let us spin all this stuff up. So I see general public license. We're going to want to adjust the DB engine, keep that the same. We are going to change this though. So this is going to be, I believe it's this one. It's the one VPC, CPU, gig RAM. Yep. Okay, so we're going to change the database instance type to this one. This is just the lowest tier one, cheapest one. And we're going to keep default as the same. SSD is the same, 20. We are going to unclick storage auto scaling. And we're not going to worry about that right now because we're not going to be permissioning this. And in terms of settings, so we're going to have an identifier, which we have already here. There's going to be a master username, and there's going to be a master password. And we're just going to copy this because we're a little bit lazy. We're just going to be going really fast. So next, and then we don't want to save this. So VPC already created with Whizlabs. Thanks, Whizlabs. And subnet, default, public available and accessible. Yes, no preference. VPC, choose existing. So we're going to press this. If it lets me, okay, it'll let me. And we're going to remove the default one and have this one. So we just change that there. And then for database name. So we're not going to provide a name. Okay. We're probably going to be doing that later, as you'll find out. Port 3306, default. We're going to disable this, which is already disabled. That's great. And backup. We don't want to have backup. So 0. And copy tags. We're going to uncheck that. Monitoring, choose disable, enhanced monitoring. Yep, we're already good there. Log exports. There's like quite a lot of settings. So thanks for mapping all this stuff out because there's a lot of different elements here. There's a lot of stuff at play. Log exports not needed. But these are all important to know about though. So definitely would recommend digging more into this because you might need to optimize certain things. You might need to have backups and that type of stuff. So definitely check that out. All right, in terms of maintenance, we are going to disable auto mirror version, and we're going to say no preference, which is already there. Delete protection, make sure that that's unclicked. Whew, okay, that's everything. All right, we're going to create database. All right, now our database instance is going to be created. Now this is going to take around like 5-ish minutes. So it just takes a while because there's a lot of different scripts that it has to load and upload. So when we go back to the database, it's going to say something such as creating. So you'll see here. So this just means that it's spinning up all of the different servers that we need, or the services that we need for RDS to function. And basically what we're going to be looking for is an endpoint and the port. So we already know the port number because we already put that in, but it needs to create a specific endpoint to access this port. That way, this is a database that's going to be running in the cloud, and it has, a certificate, and it has different authorization date, VPC group, which we already have created. And the VPC is already leveraging this, but there's a number of different subnets. We're just going to need all of this to recognize what's going on. Just while it's loading, see how would it be good for us to maybe go through the quiz, like in the meantime? I'm also going to check the Q&A in the meantime.
Yes, we have one question from Malik. He's asking, will this webinar be accessible for us to reference? Yes, the recording will be available to you all. Don't worry about that. Even the slides will be available. Yes. Other than that, we have one question in the chat box. Can you see that, Brian? From Krishna.
Oh, let me pull it up. Okay, thanks for flagging that. Oh, Krishna. Okay, thanks for the question. Okay, we do have an experience in AWS. I already learned a little bit. Okay, great. How can I get a job in AWS without experience, without programming like now? Mentioned it developing for applications. Okay, that's great. Definitely would recommend going through courses. That's probably the easiest way to get started with it. I say I did it in reverse. I don't necessarily know if this is the best use case, but I did a lot of open source projects, and that helped me to learn like how Oracle databases works, or AWS, or Google Firebase, or any of those other types of servers. Basically, where I was able to. Oh yeah, I'm just gonna refresh to make sure that this is running. But yeah, so I got involved in the open source community. There's a lot of projects that you can just find, and what's really great about that is like when you find a community, everyone's kind of learning together or building something together. So when you're building and learning along other people, that's super helpful. And I think that that's a great way for you to get a job, specifically using AWS services, because if you can point to a project that you can show that you worked on, and then you have experience with, and you have different, elements or case studies that you can show, that can be really helpful for, for jobs, for interviews. It gives you content to talk about. So I'd say being project first is helpful. Also going through platforms like Whizlabs are really great, because if you could train for a certification, specifically like we're going through, which you'll see right here, the Certified Solutions Architect Associate. If you can show proficiency in certain services or certain key solutions, that's going to be really valuable for a job, or any company, because then they'll say like, oh, okay, this person knows the different types of, services or solution that we use in production. So I definitely say like thinking about certifications is helpful, getting involved in open source projects. Something that actually really was helpful was going to like hackathons. DigitalOcean hosts something called Hacktoberfest coming up in the fall. And it's like an open source, event, and you just have to contribute a certain number of pull requests. But you can compete, you get a t-shirt, which is kind of great. We love t-shirts, we love swag. But being able to get involved in different projects can be really helpful. So thinking kind of with a project first mentality would be key, I'd say. And then building skills around what you need to learn. So I hope that's helpful, Krishna, but thanks for the great question.
Thanks, Brian. That was very helpful. Yes, so you can proceed.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'm just gonna give this another good old refresh. It takes around like 5 minutes, so I think it's coming up on that time. There's a lot of elements that are happening in the background here, so we don't exactly get to see all of that right from this screen specifically.
I guess we can use this time to announce that we have some special announcements towards the end. Once Brian gets done with his presentation, we have some really cool rewards for you all, and a very surprising announcement. So please stay tuned for that, and also be prepared for a digital selfie if you all are interested in getting in frame with Brian. So we will take this up towards the end. So be prepared for that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Neha. Yeah, excited to find out what the announcement is. So I see our RDS instance is now available. Great. We can now use RDS. So now we're going to be connecting to RDS on DB instance using MySQL Workbench. So we're going to open the GUI, which is this application right here. So this is what MySQL Workbench looks like. And I see we're going to be connecting to this. So I'm going to just double up on this screen just so that I can have access to this in case I need to change this for some reason. So I see we now have an endpoint and we have a port. We already have our username and password, which is great. So we're going to open up this. We're going to create a new connection. And I see there's going to be some sort of connection name. So remember, we didn't name the database before, but we're going to be naming connection now. and standard TCP, IP, which is great. In terms of host name, so RDS endpoint, remember that endpoint that we just walked through? We're going to be putting that right here. So in the host name, so it says we're going to put that instead. Username was this one, which we just put, and my password. Oh, not there. Store a keychain. We're going to put it there. All right. Now we're going to press OK. Duplicate name. Oh, that's right, because I have this set up before. I'm going to see if I can delete this. Oh yeah, because it's not running. Maybe I'll just create a different name. This is from the test from earlier, so that's why it's there. All right, we will do endpoint. We are going to do username again. Again, TCP IP is all set. And we're going to put in our password and we'll see, hopefully this works. All right. Boom, okay. So when we see this screen, it means that it worked. So it meant that we were able to successfully connect our local workbench with this system. So this is great. So now we're connected to the cloud. Now, when we do that, yep, so we're all set. So it says that it opened it, we're already here. All right, we're gonna now copy this code. So thanks Whizlabs for writing all of this. So we're gonna put that into the query section right here. So this is just our SQL editor. And we're gonna press this lightning button, but let's just kind of like see what this, so we're gonna create a database called student database. It's gonna select it. We're gonna create a table with some different fields. We're gonna insert 3 values into the table, and then we're gonna view the table. So we're gonna use the lightning button right here. And we're gonna be adding this. Okay, how fast was that? So now in seconds, we're able to create a database. It knows that these are the items that we want with these specific values. And now this is kind of looking, again, kind of like that Excel type spreadsheet, right? So now it's all there. We know that it's successful because we see all of these items in place. Now we're not going to close this. We're going to just keep it minimized, but I'm just going to put it to the side of the screen. So now what we're going to create a Lambda function. Lambdas are really good. Krishna, with your question from before, Lambda functions are really good skills to know how to write these because you can write code and it's just running serverlessly, which is great. So we are going to go to Lambda and we're going to create a function and we're going to do author from scratch, function name here. We're going to do Python, which is right here, 3.8, and permissions. We're going to use an existing role. And you might remember this from before. This was the role that we had just created. So Lambda RDS role, it's already coming up. And we're going to create a function. Now, AWS is going to help us create this environment to now run a serverless function. So now we have an editor in the cloud, super easy, super great. And we already did that. So now we see this is all there. Now that we have some function code, I'm going to upload this from a zip file and we're going to upload it. I already have it saved. So I believe it's RDS SQL query. Should be this one. So we're going to open this and we're going to save it. And now this should open up all of the code. Boom. Now, thanks to Whizlabs, we have all of this code here, auto-generated. We're going to be looking for a number of different codes. So there's some different subfiles here, but we're going to be looking at Lambda function. So it's going to make sure that this is all set. So inside lambda function.py. So we're going to be opening up this one. Now go to line 5 and replace the endpoint. So we're going to have the endpoint. That's why I duplicated it because I know we're going to be using it. So we're going to put that in here and just going to make sure that that's there. Endpoint, and should have all the different passwords. This should be the same. So there, so we're just editing the endpoint. Now we are going to deploy. And now I believe we're just going to go through all of these things, or we're going to test it. So Whizlabs, how do we create a test? So we're going to create an event name for this test. So test RDS. We're just using the hello world template, and we're going to do create. All right, so we're going to test once again. All right, so this is great. we see that it ran this event, it spit out these things, and we have all of the information related to the event, which is awesome. And we'll see this here. This meant that it ran successfully. Now, something that we're going to do. So we're now going to be editing our database from this Lambda function. So there's another line of code here, and this is what it looks like. This is just the code here. So we're going to be pulling this code, and we're going to be putting this, actually replacing this. So we're going to copy the code and replace all the existing code. We're going to now add in our endpoint, which is here, or else it wouldn't know that we were doing that. And this is basically just going to insert the table. So we're going to be inserting some values into this table with Elizabeth, Art, and First. Now we're going to want to deploy this. And now we just switched out the serverless function. So now let's test it. Let's see what actually happens. So what we just did was we inserted data, or it tested the ability to insert data into our database. And we just got insertion successful, which is great. And we know that it's successful because it said so. So that's great. So this function works. Now we're going to go back to our MySQL workbench, and we are going to now be taking all of this code out because it works. Now we're going to be putting in this. So this is just going to now basically say, run this function from students. So we're going to press this lightning button. And did you see something change? This was now just added into our table. So we just used, and this is actually kind of cool. So we used our computer, we connected to RDS running in the cloud, we ran a function that did something to our database, and now we're able to now update our database in real time. So this is the value of serverless, because we didn't have to, go and be running a network and now be running this locally on our system. We're leveraging the power of AWS in the cloud to now be updating our data tables. Super fast, lightning quick, really accessible, really easy. And you see that it's there. So that's pretty much all that is to it. Let's just validate Whizlabs and have Whizlabs give us its blessing that we did it correctly. All right. Whew. So we got a success in terms of our status. We did all of these elements, and we did quite a lot. So this is all of the things that we needed to do to basically set all this stuff up. Now we're just going to delete all of our resources. So we're just going to delete the function here. And this is just really important in terms of cleanup. So you just want to make sure that you turn off different services or different key values. I believe with Whizlabs, you will delete event like actions after you sign out. But this is just a good practice to just do that. But I won't do that here, but just so you know, this is a really good practice for us to do. So I'm now going to unshare, and then we're going to go back to our presentation. And I think we did those in record time. So that's pretty cool. All right, I'm going to go back to presentation. I'm going to start sharing again. All right, so Q&A time. Sneha, should I go next slide? Is that good?
I think Brian, you have one question. So you can just check the Q&A page. One question is there. I think the remaining you have already answered in the while giving the webinar. So one question is there in the Q&A document.
Oh, okay, let me check. Okay, I see from Prasha. I must say it was on course, but is there a huge content? I remember, how can I crack the associate certification? Can you give me tips? Yeah, okay, so tips for the associate certification. Actually, something that you should definitely check out, Prasha, if you're interested in the Solutions Architect Associate exam. AWS just launched a program. I want to say it's Carissa from the AWS team. I'm gonna find her her LinkedIn and I'm gonna share it with you. She just announced that they are doing this whole challenge for the solutions architect. So AWS is gonna be creating a bunch of webinars and a bunch of free resources and guides. You can also get a discount on the actual exam, like the certification itself. So I think instead of it being $150 US, I think it's 75. So not bad in terms of a discount, but yeah, I think in terms of certifications, hands-on, like definitely agree. Mayank, like definitely like doing practice hands-on labs is important. It's really easy to like read white papers and feel like you know like the information, but actually doing it will train muscle memory. And then when you actually are called to do this, because kind of like if memory, like I think we all kind of struggle with like memory, right? Like it's hard to remember all this stuff. When you do it multiple times, it'll train you to remember how to do it. Kind of like going to a gym. You don't need to remember like how to do weights after like the 10th time, because then it's like, okay, I know my workout, I know what I'm doing. So I'm gonna find that that link for you, Prasha, but definitely would recommend hands-on labs. Those are key for learning actually how to do this. And then project-based learning is super important too.
Okay, we have another question. Can you check the open section, Ryan?
Yes. Open. Okay, thanks for that. How is AWS database architecture developer jobs interviews like? I'm an Oracle, PL, SQL, 10 years of experience. That's awesome. And database certified, preparing for AWS database specialty. Perfect. Okay. Definitely would recommend going through some sort of database specialty. There's different guides online. I definitely would recommend going through the documentation. I mean, it sounds like you have quite a lot of experience. I think where database administrator, sort of that type of database specialty is moving, is more in the serverless. So if you're able to like know databases, but also know how to connect to them, kind of like what we just did with Lambda functions and that type of stuff, not exactly pertinent to database management, but it is important to know how to connect to them. So I definitely would recommend checking out the guides. AWS also has a Twitch channel. They host a lot of different events and just different live streams. So I definitely would recommend checking that out. And I'm pretty sure there's like probably some videos on Free Code Camp or just on YouTube in general, or Medium articles. But database specialty, really, really great that you have all that experience with Oracle, MySQL, AWS SOA, like you're DA certified. That's going to be key. But also just make sure that you do study for the exam, because sometimes like where you can get tripped up is knowing like basically like you know a lot of this stuff, but maybe not necessarily the test material. So just make sure that you prep with questions. AWS has a number of stuff on the website. So definitely would recommend just answering with questions. But it sounds like you got it. I mean, you have lots of experience, so you're going to crush it. I'm totally confident about that. Code off AWS certification, will it be valid for once 3 years, or will it expire too? I'm not exactly sure about.
That's a Whizlabs related question. We'll answer it.
Oh, okay.
Proceed to the next one.
Oh, okay. Are we going to discuss how databases are working in terms of storage solutions on how DB cricket? Not on this one, but definitely a great question to think about. Definitely like there's really good ways to optimize DynamoDB, specifically with partitions and just databases with storage solutions. So definitely would recommend digging into some of these services that we went through today, and really go through the documentation and maybe even some YouTube videos to see how exactly we could go about that. So you could talk about, you could do like hour webinars for like each individual database. So definitely would recommend checking out the documentation. That's the best way to start, at least.
Okay, great. We don't have any other questions in the chat box, so I think we are good to go with the questions. Okay, let's proceed with the quiz part, which I'm sure most of us are waiting for. Brian, can you switch on to the next slide? Yes. Mm-hmm. So before we go ahead with the quiz, I would like to announce the rewards, that what is at stake for this quiz. So we will announce 5 winners for this quiz, and the winners will be decided on the basis of first, the ones who answer first, and those who are answering all the 5 questions correctly and who are answering it first. Okay. So the awards are: the winners will be getting 1 free online course or practice test from Whizlabs, and the rest of the attendees, we have special discount codes for you, which is inspired by Brian's name. So one is WizBrian60, you will get 60% off on any course or practice test of your choice. Then we have WizBrian30, from which you'll get 30% off on premium subscription. So make sure you give your best in this quiz, which Brian is going to take over next. Yes, over to you, Brian.
All right, thanks. So question 1, Which database is focused on NoSQL key value pairs? Oh, we're getting a lot of responses in the chat. This is awesome.
Yes.
All right, so I'm just gonna have this open for a few seconds. Just make sure that everyone has access to it.
I think everybody has answered. You can proceed to the next question.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, everyone. All right, this is a lot of participation. Wow. All right. Question 2. Which database helps you map relationships? Specifically, relationships like between users or activity between users. Oh, there's a ton of responses. Oh, this is awesome.
It is going
I see them all coming in right now.
Yeah, it's going to be really difficult to decide the winners.
I know, because so many people signed up today. This is awesome. Not a bad problem to have, though, but
yeah. Okay, I think we can proceed.
Okay, perfect. All right, thanks everyone for all of your answers. All right, now question 3. Which database emphasizes immutability?
Shall we proceed, Brian?
Yeah, I think so. All right, thanks everyone for your answers. All right, question 4. Which AWS service would you implement to reduce network latency and offload DB pressure?
I think we are getting mixed responses for this one.
Yeah, I know this is a tricky one.
Yeah.
I tried to throw in like different ones. Like some of them are maybe a little bit harder than others. Tried to mix it up. Keep everyone on their toes.
That's good.
But thanks for all the participation, everyone. This is so awesome to see. And excited to see that people learned stuff today, which is awesome. I think that's always like the goal. If you can walk away from any tech talk with something that you learn, huge, huge, huge value there.
Okay, I think it's time for question 5.
All right, question 5. All right. I have multiple database engines available: Aurora, Postgres, MySQL, MariaDB, Oracle, SQL Server. Which database am I? And we may or may not have just used this service. May or may not.
Okay, 10 seconds to go. Make sure you have answered.
All right. Final seconds. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . .
For those asking where to answer, you can answer it either in the chat box or in the Q&A section. Don't worry about it. We are keeping a track of all the answers.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Sneha.
Okay, I think the time is up and Brian will now reveal the correct answers.
All right. Are we ready? All right. Here they are. And a lot of you got like most of these right, which is awesome and really great to see. So these are sort of just a brief overview of some of the services that we used. And we actually just used RDS in the last Whizlabs lab, and we used DynamoDB in the first one. So I thought that was kind of fitting to have like the first lab with the first question and the last lab as the last question. So there was some structure to the answers.
Whizlabs is launching 100 Days of Cloud Challenge from today, and it will last till 19th of September. So we invite all of you to take part in this huge challenge because we have some really exciting rewards for you all. And I am sharing a link in the chat box so you all can see all the details about this challenge. We have some really cool rewards, and it's not just rewards for the 100 days. We have weekly rewards, we have monthly rewards. So everything to keep you excited. Make sure you participate in this and also invite your friends and colleagues for this challenge. All the best, everyone. Follow us on all the social media channels, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and you will find all the updates related to 100 Days of Cloud Challenge from Whizlabs there. Thank you so much.